I heard her sister say it behind a wall of white roses. Nobody wants you, Meredith. Not dressed like that. Not at 32, not with everyone knowing what happened. I had been reaching for a glass of champagne I didn't even want, mostly because charity galas make my hands feel useless. One second, I was a polite man in a navy suit pretending to understand silent auction art. The next, I was standing perfectly still while a woman's dignity was being cut open 10 feet away. My name is Eli Parker. I was 34, an architectural project manager in Chicago, and I had spent most of my adult life being useful to other people without getting too attached to anyone. Useful was safe. Useful didn't ask you to risk your heart in a crowded room. Then I saw Meredith. She stood near the service hallway in a deep green dress that made the ballroom lights seem warmer around her. Not flashy, not desperate, just elegant in a way that made you look twice, then feel embarrassed for staring. Her older sister Sabrina was angled toward her with a smile that belonged on a knife. Meredith's hand rested lightly against her stomach, not in insecurity exactly, but like she was holding herself together with two fingers. "You promised you wouldn't do this tonight," Meredith said. Her voice was quiet but not weak. That mattered. There was a steadiness in it, a worn-out kind of strength that made something in my chest tighten. Sabrina laughed under her breath. "Do what? Tell you the truth before you embarrass yourself? Look around. Men like that don't cross rooms for women like you." I looked around before I could stop myself. The ballroom was full of polished people pretending not to watch. Men in tuxedos, women glittering under chandeliers, donors with name tags and careful smiles. A string quartet played something gentle enough to make cruelty feel even uglier. Meredith glanced toward the dance floor. That was when I understood. She hadn't wanted attention. She had wanted one decent moment in a room determined to make her feel invisible. I didn't know her well. That's the honest truth. We had met twice before through my friend Jonah's nonprofit board. She ran community literacy programs and had once corrected my terrible pronunciation of a French pastry in front of 3 donors, then handed me half of hers because, in her words, if you're going to embarrass yourself, you should at least be fed. I had liked her immediately. Not because she needed saving, because she had a dry, sideways humor that snuck up on you. Because she listened like she was actually letting your words land. Because when she laughed, she didn't perform it for the room. She just gave it to you briefly and honestly, like a small flame, cupped against the wind. And because for 2 months I had been finding excuses to stand near the sign-in table whenever she volunteered at events. Sabrina leaned closer. Just go home before people start pitying you. Something in me moved before my brain approved the plan. I set down the champagne. I crossed the ballroom. Now, I should mention something. I am not a dramatic man. I do not make scenes. I don't even send back cold soup. But there are moments when staying polite becomes its own kind of cowardice. Meredith saw me coming first. Her eyes widened a little, and for a second I caught the exact expression of a woman bracing for one more humiliation. That almost stopped me. Then she lifted her chin. That kept me going. "Meredith," I said, stopping in front of her. Sabrina's smile froze. "Eli, isn't it?" I didn't look at her. "Would you dance with me?" The string quartet shifted into a slower song, as if the universe had a flair for timing. Meredith blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Dance," I repeated, holding out my hand. "With me. Unless you have strong objections to men who step on feet under pressure." Her mouth parted, then curved just enough to make my pulse do something unprofessional. "I do have standards," she said. I was afraid of that. "Can you count to 4? "Usually, under supervision." For one suspended second, the hurt in her face gave way to amusement. Not gratitude, not relief. Amusement. Like she had decided I might be worth testing. Then she placed her hand in mine. Her fingers were cool. Mine were not. The moment our hands touched, I became aware of every ridiculous detail, the softness of her palm, the faint scent of orange blossom, the way her eyes searched mine, not asking whether I was rescuing her, but whether I understood the cost of being seen. I led her onto the dance floor. People noticed. Of course they did. The room did that subtle turning thing rich people do when they want to stare without admitting it. Meredith glanced over my shoulder. You know they're watching. Yes. You enjoy public pressure? Not usually. I'm more of a quiet panic in private kind of man. That earned me a real smile. It hit harder than it should have. I placed my hand at her waist, careful and respectful, and felt her take a slow breath. She was close enough that I could see a tiny gold fleck near her left iris, close enough that the noise of the ballroom blurred at the edges. Why did you do that? She asked softly. Ask you to dance? Cross the room like the hero in a movie my mother would cry over. I'm not a hero, I said. And if your mother cries, I'm billing someone for emotional labor. She laughed once, surprised. Then the laugh faded. Eli. There was my name in her mouth, and it made the floor feel less steady. I guided us through a cautious turn. To my great relief, I did not injure her. I did it, I said, because I wanted to dance with you. Her eyes held mine. No one had ever looked at me like that in a crowded room. Like she could hear both what I said and what I was still afraid to say. That's a dangerous answer, she murmured. Is it? It means I have to decide whether I believe you. I swallowed. Take your time. Her hand shifted on my shoulder, not much. Just enough to become a choice instead of a courtesy. The music carried us past the silent auction table, past Jonah standing near the bar with his eyebrows practically climbing off his face, past Sabrina, whose expression had turned from smug to something tight and furious. Meredith saw her too, her shoulders stiffened. Don't look at her, I said gently. Meredith's gaze came back to mine. Is that an instruction? A request. Better. Then, because apparently she wasn't done surprising me, she stepped half an inch closer. My breath forgot its job. You're not very good at this, she whispered. Dancing? Hiding what you feel? I nearly missed the beat. She smiled again, but this time it was different. Softer. Braver. A little sad around the edges. Before I could answer, the music ended. Applause rose around us, polite at first, then warmer than I expected. Meredith looked startled by it, as if she had forgotten a room could hold something other than judgment. I kept her hand in mine 1 second too long. She noticed. So did I. Sabrina appeared beside us before I could decide whether to let go. Well, she said brightly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. That was generous of you, Eli. Meredith's fingers tightened around mine. Sabrina tilted her head, smiling at her sister. Tell me, she said, did Meredith ask you to do that before or after she found out her ex-fiancé was here tonight? Meredith's hand went still in mine, not limp, not frightened. Still the way a bird goes still when a shadow passes overhead. Sabrina's smile gleamed. Oh, she didn't tell you. I finally looked at her. We were dancing, not exchanging tax records. A few nearby guests pretended to cough into their drinks. Meredith's mouth twitched, but her eyes stayed guarded. Sabrina was not finished. People like her never are when they smell blood. His name is Graham Vale, she said. He and Meredith were engaged, big wedding planned. Then he left her 6 weeks before the ceremony, very sad, very public. Meredith pulled her hand from mine. I hated the absence immediately. Sabrina, she said, that's enough. Is it? I'm only making sure Eli understands the context. The context, I said, is that your sister accepted a dance from me. That's the entire context I'm interested in. For the first time, Sabrina's expression faltered. Meredith turned her head, looking at me like I had said something in a language she once knew, but hadn't heard in years. Then a man's voice came from behind us. Meredith. I knew it was him before I turned. Graham Vale had the particular confidence of a man who had been forgiven too often. Tall, silver cufflinks, expensive jawline, sympathetic eyes arranged for display. Graham, Meredith said. He stepped close enough to make me dislike him without evidence. I didn't know you'd be here. This is a fundraising gala for the literacy foundation I work with. Yes, of course. His smile softened theatrically. You look well. She gave him nothing. Thank you. Graham glanced at me. And you are? Eli Parker. His handshake was firm and meaningless. Are you with Meredith? The question landed between us. Meredith looked at me. I could have made it easy. I could have said no, just a friend, just someone who happened to cross the room. But I had not crossed the ballroom to become smaller at the first sign of pressure. I'm with Meredith, I said. Her breath caught. Graham's gaze sharpened. Sabrina's eyebrows lifted. Meredith, however, did something that warmed me from the ribs outward. She stepped closer to my side, not hiding behind me, claiming the space beside me. Eli asked me to dance, she said. I said yes. It was simple. It was enough. It sounded like a door closing. Graham looked between us, then gave a thin smile. I see. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. We intend to, Meredith said. He left with Sabrina trailing after him like gossip in heels. For a moment, neither of us moved. The ballroom resumed around us, conversations swelling back into place. Someone laughed near the auction table. A waiter passed with crab cakes. Normal life, continuing rudely after a small earthquake. Meredith exhaled. I'm sorry. For what? For that. You didn't cause that. My family causes weather systems. I've survived Chicago winters. I'm sturdy. She looked up at me. You told him you were with me. Yes. Why? There it was again. The question beneath the question. Why would you choose this? Why would you stand here when walking away would be so much cleaner? I glanced toward the French doors opening onto a balcony. Do you want some air? She studied me for a beat, then nodded. Outside, the night was cool and blue-black, with the city glowing beyond the terrace like a promise it had no intention of keeping. The music came through the glass, softened and distant. Meredith wrapped her arms around herself. I took off my jacket and held it out. She eyed it. If I accept, will you get smug? Almost certainly. Then I'll endure the cold. I draped it over the back of a nearby chair. Available if your pride develops hypothermia. She laughed quietly and leaned against the stone railing. For a minute, we looked out at the lights together. No performance, no audience. Just the two of us and the small leftover tremor of what had happened inside. Finally, she said, he didn't leave because of some grand betrayal. Graham, I mean. You don't have to tell me. I know. She turned toward me. That's why I want to. My chest tightened. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. He said I had become difficult to love, too focused on work, too anxious, too unwilling to make myself convenient. He waited until invitations were mailed, deposits were paid, everyone knew. Then he made it sound like leaving me was an act of moral courage. I said nothing because my first 10 responses were all unhelpful and possibly prosecutable. Meredith glanced over. You're making a face. I'm designing a building in my head. A building? A windowless one where Graham can go reflect. Her laugh came faster this time, bright against the cold. Then she shook her head. The worst part is, after a while I started wondering if he was right. He wasn't. You don't know that. I know enough. Her eyes searched mine again. You know I correct pastry pronunciation and have dramatic family members. And you run literacy programs, speak to donors like they're human beings, laugh at my jokes when they barely deserve it, and faced down your sister without turning cruel. I paused. I know enough to want to know more. The silence after that felt different, charged, careful. Meredith's arms loosened from around herself. That, she said softly, was almost too smooth. I swear it was accidental. Good. I distrust polished men. Then I'm your safest option. I once said supposedly in a board meeting. She winced. Eli. I know, I still wake up sweating. She smiled and looked down at her hands. I wanted to touch her. Not to comfort, not to prove anything to anyone. I wanted the honest privilege of it. So I asked, may I? Her gaze lifted to mine. I held out my hand, palm up, between us. She looked at it for a long second, then placed her fingers over mine. This time, there was no ballroom. No sister. No ex-fiancé. Just her skin warm from the inside now and my thumb resting lightly along her knuckles. You should know, she said. I am not interested in being anyone's revenge scene. Good. Or charity project. Terrible investment. You'd out-argue me in a week. 3 days. See? She stepped closer, close enough that the lapel of my shirt nearly brushed her dress. What are you interested in? I asked. Her eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. It was quick. It was not subtle. My heart answered like an idiot. I'm interested, she said, in whether you meant it when you said you wanted to dance with me. I meant it before I crossed the room. Her expression softened. Eli. The way she said my name had changed. Less question, more invitation. I lifted our joined hands and pressed my lips lightly to her knuckles. Not grand, not possessive. A promise, maybe, though it was too early for that word. Meredith's breath shivered. When I lowered her hand, she didn't pull away. Inside, she said, voice quiet. I felt humiliated. I'm sorry. Out here, I feel... She swallowed. Chosen. I forgot every clever thing I had ever prepared for life. You are, I said. Her eyes shone, but she smiled anyway. Then choose me again. For what? The next dance. I grinned. Demanding. Selective. Lucky for me? We'll see. She finally accepted my jacket, slipping it around her shoulders as though granting me a minor diplomatic victory. Then she took my hand first and led me back toward the ballroom. Just before we reached the door, she stopped. And Eli? Yes? If Graham asks again whether you're with me, I waited. Her thumb brushed once across my palm. Tell him I'm with you too. There are sentences a man hears and stores somewhere permanent. Tell him I'm with you too was one of mine. Meredith said it quietly, just outside the ballroom doors, with my jacket around her shoulders and her hand still threaded through mine. She didn't look like a woman borrowing courage anymore. She looked like a woman deciding where to spend it. So when we walked back in, I did not lead. We entered together. The second dance was less of a spectacle than the first, though not by much. People still watched. Graham pretended not to. Sabrina openly did, her mouth pressed into a pale line. Meredith noticed. Then she turned her back on them and stepped into my arms. Better, she said. My dancing? Your posture. You looked like you were preparing for legal testimony. I've never been claimed by a beautiful woman before. There's paperwork in my head. Her gaze flicked up to mine. Beautiful? I nearly tripped. She smiled. Careful, Parker. Compliments count when spoken under chandelier lighting. Then I'll repeat it somewhere less flattering. Confident. Hopeful. That quieted her. The music was slower than before. Her hand rested on my shoulder, her fingers warmed through my shirt. My palm settled at her waist again, and this time she leaned into the contact as if it were not an accident. I felt it everywhere. I had been attracted to women before. Of course I had. But attraction with Meredith had edges of recognition, as if some part of me had been waiting in a room and had just heard the right knock. You're thinking very loudly, she said. I was hoping that wasn't visible. It's the eyebrows. I have expressive eyebrows? They're practically giving a speech. What are they saying? She studied my face with unsettling seriousness. Something like, I am honorable, concerned, and possibly falling into trouble. I stared at her. Her smile faltered. Too much? No, I said, annoyingly accurate. A blush rose in her cheeks, quick and lovely. I wanted to kiss her then. Not because Graham watched from across the room. Not because Sabrina would choke on her champagne. I wanted to kiss her because she had seen me with ridiculous precision and had not looked away. Instead, I asked, Will you let me take you out after this? Her fingers tightened lightly on my shoulder. Out? Coffee, dessert, greasy fries in a place where nobody owns cufflinks. It's a gala. There's probably an etiquette rule against leaving early for fries. I'm prepared to be socially ruined. That's a serious offer. It is. Her eyes searched mine. Not because you feel sorry for me? No. Not because this is thrilling and tonight I'm the wounded woman with dramatic lighting? No. Then why? The song turned us slowly beneath the chandelier. Because when you told me I was bad at hiding what I feel, I said, you were right. I've wanted to ask you out since the pastry incident. Meredith's mouth parted. I kept going before nerves made me smarter. I didn't because you seemed private and busy, and sometimes when you smiled at me, I lost access to language. That sounds inconvenient. Deeply. Her hand slid from my shoulder to rest nearer my collar, just a breath closer to my skin. I noticed you too, she said. My heart stuttered. You did? Yes, you stand near exits at events. That is not romantic. That is anxiety. You help stack chairs when no one asks. Still not romantic. You remember how people take their coffee. Her thumb brushed the edge of my collar. And you looked at me like I was the only honest thing in the room. I could not answer for a moment. The music ended, but neither of us stepped away. Then Jonah appeared at my side wearing the expression of a man trying to look casual while bursting with gossip. Eli, Meredith, the foundation chair is looking for you both for photos. Meredith groaned softly. Of course. I leaned down a little. Fries after? She looked at me beneath her lashes. Fries after. The photos were torture disguised as philanthropy. We stood in rows under hot lights while donors arranged themselves by importance. Graham maneuvered himself near Meredith twice. Both times, Meredith simply moved closer to me. By the second photograph, my hand rested at the small of her back. By the third, hers was tucked through my arm. By the fourth, Jonah whispered, "Subtle as fireworks, you two." Meredith whispered back, "Jealousy is unattractive on you." I am thrilled and emotionally overwhelmed, he said. At last, we escaped. We slipped out through a side entrance just after 10, laughing like teenagers fleeing detention. Meredith still wore my jacket and I carried her little beaded clutch because she announced it was too small to be practical and therefore clearly designed by a sadist. 3 blocks away, we found a 24-hour diner glowing yellow against the cold. Inside, the waitress called us fancy people and put us in a booth near the window. Meredith slid in across from me, green dress and navy jacket and wind-flushed cheeks, looking so impossibly real after all that polished cruelty that I had to look down at the menu to steady myself. "You're staring," she said. "I was admiring the ketchup." Liar. Terrible liar, I admitted. She folded her arms on the table and leaned forward. "Say it somewhere less flattering." I blinked. "What?" "You said you'd repeat the compliment." The diner light was harsh. A coffee machine hissed. Somewhere behind us, a man in a Bears hoodie argued with a jukebox. Meredith looked more beautiful than she had under every chandelier in Chicago. "You're beautiful," I said. The playfulness in her face softened into something vulnerable. "Thank you," she whispered. The waitress arrived and saved me from revealing the entire state of my soul. We ordered fries, coffee for me, tea for Meredith, and a slice of cherry pie to share because she said sharing dessert was a useful compatibility test. When the pie came, she cut it with her fork and pushed the first bite toward me. "Don't make it weird," she said. "I wasn't planning to. You have sincere eyes. They make everything weird." I took the bite. "Excellent pie, terrifying woman." She smiled, then grew quiet, tracing the rim of her teacup. "I forgot what this felt like," she said. "What?" "Being wanted without being measured." The words settled between us. I reached across the table, not all the way, just enough to offer. She met me there, her fingers laced through mine between the salt shaker and the sugar packets. "I'm rusty," she said. "At dating?" "At trusting my instincts." "Mine are currently shouting." "What are they shouting?" "That I should ask whether I can kiss you before the night ends." Her eyes lifted to mine. For once, she didn't tease. "Yes," she said. The diner seemed to go very still. I stood too quickly, bumped my knee, and made her laugh. Then she slid out of the booth and we met beside it, half hidden by a plastic fern and the glow of the pie case. I touched her cheek, gently, giving her every chance to step back. She didn't. Meredith rose onto her toes and kissed me first. It was soft, brief, and devastating. Her hand curled into my shirt front. Mine settled at her waist. For 3 seconds, the whole damaged world narrowed to the warmth of her mouth and the tiny sound she made when I kissed her back. When we parted, she kept her forehead near mine. "Well?" she breathed. I smiled. "Compatibility test?" "Passed." Then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and the color drained from her face. I looked before I could stop myself. A message from Sabrina. "Don't be stupid. Graham wants to talk. You owe him closure before you embarrass us all again." Meredith locked the phone and looked up at me. This time, she did not pull away. Instead, she slipped her hand back into mine. "I don't want to talk to him tonight," she said. "Then don't." Her thumb moved over my knuckles, steadying herself. Then, quietly, she added, "I want to finish my pie with you." So we finished the pie. That sounds like a small thing, but it didn't feel small. It felt like Meredith choosing the booth, the bad coffee, the plastic fern, and me over the gravity of people who had trained her to answer when they snapped their fingers. Her phone buzzed 3 more times. She turned it face down. On the 4th buzz, she picked it up, powered it off, and dropped it into her clutch. "There," she said, a little breathless. "Revolution." I lifted my coffee. "To treason." She tapped her teacup against it. "To fries before closure." We ate until the plate held only cherry streaks and a single fry neither of us wanted to claim. Meredith nudged it toward me. "You're the gentleman. Sacrifice yourself." "I thought gentlemen offered the last fry." "That's courtship propaganda." "I'm learning so much." She smiled, but her eyes kept returning to my mouth with a kind of shy curiosity that made my pulse behave like it had missed a stare. Outside the diner, the wind had sharpened. Meredith tucked herself deeper into my jacket, and I walked close enough that our shoulders brushed every few steps. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Do you always do that? Kiss women beside pie cases? Cross rooms, say what you mean, make it look easy." I laughed once. "Meredith, I have spent most of my life making sure nothing looks like it matters too much." She glanced up. "Why?" The streetlight caught the gold in her eyes. I could have made a joke. I almost did. But she had been brave with me all night. "My parents loved each other loudly," I said. "Until they didn't. Then they hated each other loudly. I learned early that wanting someone gave them excellent aim." Her steps slowed. "So I became careful," I continued. "Reliable, useful, present enough that nobody could call me absent, but never close enough to be wrecked." Meredith stopped beside a dark storefront, the window full of mannequins in winter coats. "Eli," she said softly. I looked at her. She reached up and adjusted the collar of my shirt, though it didn't need adjusting. Her fingers lingered there, warm against my throat. "For what it's worth," she said, "you don't feel careful tonight. I don't feel careful. Does that scare you?" "Yes." Her thumb rested just above my collarbone. "Me too." The confession did something to me. Not heat exactly, though there was plenty of that. Something deeper. A door opening from both sides. I lowered my head slowly, giving her time. She met me halfway. The second kiss was not like the first. The first had been a question. This one was an answer she gave with her hand curled at my neck and her body leaning into mine. I held her waist, then her back, feeling the fine tremble that moved through her when I deepened the kiss by the smallest degree. A taxi hissed past on wet pavement. Somewhere, music thumped from a bar. The city continued being itself. I forgot all of it. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against my chest. "I should probably be embarrassed," she murmured. "Please don't. I'm having the best night of my adult life." She laughed into my shirt. "That is either romantic or deeply concerning. Both can be true." Her phone was off, but mine wasn't. It rang. Jonah's name flashed across the screen. I grimaced. If I ignore him, he'll assume I've been murdered or married. "Answer." I did. Jonah didn't bother with hello. "Where are you?" "Walking." "With Meredith?" "Yes." "Good. Is she okay?" I looked at her. She watched me with cautious amusement. "She's here," I said. Jonah lowered his voice. "Graham is telling people you ambushed him. Sabrina's making noise about Meredith being unstable. It's ugly." Meredith's expression changed, not crumpled, hardened. I can hear him, she said. I handed her the phone. Jonah, she said, thank you for worrying. I'm fine. A pause. No, don't argue with them. Please, I mean it. Another pause. Her jaw tightened. Because I don't want my life decided by whichever person speaks loudest in a ballroom. She looked at me when she said it. My chest ached. I'll handle it tomorrow, she finished. Tonight, I'm unavailable. She ended the call and returned my phone. For a moment, the old shadow crossed her face. I didn't step in front of it. I didn't tell her how to feel. I just offered my hand. She took it immediately. That sounded brave, I said. It sounded terrified from my side. Still counts. She breathed out a laugh. I hate that they can still make me feel 16. Who were you at 16? Oh, tragic bangs. Too many books. Secretly convinced I'd have a great love story because I underlined romantic passages in pencil. I would have liked 16-year-old you. She would have pretended not to like you, then written your name in the margins of Jane Eyre. I pressed a hand to my heart. Scandalous. Meredith squeezed my fingers. What about you? At 16, tall, awkward, in love with my drafting teacher's handwriting? Not the teacher? The handwriting, very elegant loops. Architecture was inevitable. We walked again, slower now, our hands swinging between us. At her building, a brick walk-up with flower boxes gone bare for winter, she stopped at the bottom step. The moment changed shape. The night gathered close. This is me, she said. I see. I'm not inviting you up. I didn't ask. I know. She smiled faintly. That's why I'm telling you like I'm making a brave moral stand. I respect the stand. Good. I wanted to kiss her again. I wanted to ask when I could see her. I wanted, absurdly, to stand on that sidewalk until morning, just to make sure the night didn't become something she doubted in daylight. Meredith seemed to read enough of that on my face to soften. Eli. Yes? Ask me properly. For what? Her mouth curved. You know for what. I took a breath. Meredith, will you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not because of Graham, not because of Sabrina, not because of anything that happened in that ballroom. Because I like you. Because I want to know what books you underlined. Because tonight didn't feel like enough. Her eyes shone. Yes, she said. Tomorrow. Good. Good. Neither of us moved. Then she stepped down one stair, took my face in both hands, and kissed me with a sweetness that nearly unmade me. It was brief enough to be decent and lingering enough to be dangerous. When she pulled back, her smile was unguarded. Good night, Eli Parker. Good night, Meredith. She went inside and I waited until the lobby light flicked on. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I should have ignored it. I didn't. A text appeared. Stay away from Meredith. You don't know what she does to men who love her. I looked up at her lit window. Then another message came through. Ask her why Graham really left. I stood on the sidewalk with my phone in my hand and Meredith's window glowing above me. For 30 seconds, I let the message try to become louder than the night we had. Just shared. Stay away from Meredith. Ask her why Graham really left. Then I did something younger me would not have done. I did not build a theory. I did not retreat into caution. I did not let a stranger's poison outrank the woman who had kissed me under a streetlight with both hands on my face. I texted Meredith. Are you awake? Her reply came almost immediately. Unfortunately. Did you also forget how to be normal after tonight? I smiled despite everything. Completely. Also, I got a strange text. I don't want to discuss it by message, but I want you to hear it from me before anyone else twists it. The typing dots appeared. Vanished, appeared again. Then my phone rang. Kyag, read it, she said. No hello, no pretending. So I read both messages. Silence followed. Not guilty silence, tired silence. Finally, she said, that was Graham. You're sure? Yes. I closed my eyes. Meredith, he left because I wouldn't sign over half my inheritance into a joint investment account managed by his firm. That was not what I expected. My grandmother left me money, she continued, Not millions. Enough to help the literacy program expand? Enough that Graham suddenly became very interested in our financial future. When I asked for an independent attorney, he called me suspicious. When I refused, he said I was incapable of trust. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. After he left, he told people I had become unstable. Sabrina believed him because believing him was easier than admitting she'd encouraged the match. I leaned against the brick wall, anger moving through me clean and hot. Why didn't you tell people? Because I was ashamed, not of refusing, of almost saying yes. I looked up at her window. Can I come back up to your door? Not inside, just the door. A pause, then softer. Yes. She met me in the lobby barefoot, still in the green dress, my jacket folded over her arms. For a moment we just looked at each other, then she said, "You can leave if that's too much history for one dance and a pie." I stepped closer. I'm not leaving because a weak man punished you for having boundaries. Her eyes filled. I need you to understand, she whispered. I'm not always brave. Sometimes I still hear them. Sabrina, Graham, all of them. I don't need you fearless. What do you need? You honest. I reached for her hand, and willing to tell me when to come closer and when to give you room. Her fingers curled around mine. Closer, she said. So I went closer. She rested her forehead against my chest, and I held her in the quiet lobby while the radiator clanked and the city moved beyond the glass. It was not dramatic. It was better than dramatic. It was real. The next evening, I took her to dinner. She wore a blue sweater and no armor. I wore the navy suit again because she claimed she deserved to see it without charity gala trauma lighting. We ate pasta in a tiny restaurant where the tables were too close together and the waiter called everyone sweetheart. Meredith told me about her grandmother who had taught adults to read in a church basement. I told her about the first house I ever drew as a kid, which had 12 secret rooms and no bathrooms, because apparently I had priorities. She laughed so hard she had to cover her mouth with her napkin. After dinner, we walked by the river. Graham called once. She declined it. Sabrina sent one paragraph beginning with, "I'm only concerned," and Meredith deleted it without reading the rest. Then she looked at me. I don't want my life to be a courtroom where I keep proving I'm worth loving. I took both her hands. Then don't make your case to me. What should I do? Let me learn you. The wind lifted her hair across her cheek. I brushed it back slowly and she leaned into my touch. I can do that, she said. Graham tried twice more that week. Once through Jonah, once through a mutual donor. Meredith handled both herself. She sent one calm email stating that any further contact would be documented and that her personal finances, her choices, and her relationships were not open for discussion. She copied Sabrina. Sabrina did not apologize immediately. People rarely do when pride is still feeding them. But she stopped, and Meredith bloomed. Not because of me, beside me. That distinction mattered to both of us. By spring, we had rituals. Thursday takeout, Sunday bookstore wandering, a running argument about whether raisins belonged in baked goods. She said yes under limited circumstances. I said raisins were failed grapes and should seek counseling. She met my mother and charmed her by asking for embarrassing childhood stories. I met Meredith's grandmother's old friends from the literacy program and was interrogated by 6 women who could have run a federal agency by lunch. One of them, Mrs. Alvarez, pointed a cookie at me and said, "You look at her like she hung the moon." Meredith blushed. I said, "I'm aware she had help from gravity." "Smart mouth," Mrs. Alvarez said. "Keep him." A year after that night, we went to another gala. Same ballroom, same chandeliers, same white roses. But everything else was different. Meredith wore red. Not careful red, not polite red. A red that entered the room before she did and made no apologies. When we passed the place where Sabrina had once said, "Nobody wanted her," Meredith paused. Her hand found mine. "You okay?" I asked. She looked around the ballroom, then back at me. "Yes," she said and smiled. I was just thinking how wrong she was. Across the room, Sabrina watched us. Her expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, she looked away. Meredith turned to me. "Dance with me," I pretended to consider. I should warn you, I'm still underqualified. You're supervised. Usually helps. She laughed, and I followed her onto the dance floor. This time, no rescue. No audience mattered. No cruel sentence needed answering. There was only Meredith stepping into my arms because she wanted to be there, and me holding her like the privilege still astonished me. Halfway through the song, she leaned close and whispered, "You know, when you crossed the ballroom that first night, I thought you were being kind." I was. Then I thought you were being reckless. Also true. Her eyes shone. Now I think you were being mine a little before either of us knew. My throat tightened. I kissed her there, under the chandeliers, with the music turning around us, and her smile warm against my mouth. And when the room applauded later for some speech neither of us had heard, Meredith stayed in my arms, laughing softly, her red dress bright as a flame no one could cup, smother, or claim but her. What would you have done if you overheard someone sneer, "Nobody wants you," at a woman standing alone in a ballroom? Have you ever experienced something similar where one unexpected act of kindness changed everything? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.